Hi, this is Jan with Jan's Jewelry Supplies. Welcome to another soldering video. Today we're going to be making one of these bracelets. First I'm going to go over the supplies you'll need. Since I'll be using plated settings, you'll need a heat gun and some 300-degree solder wire. And you will also need a wet floral foam or J-board, some Play-Doh, and you will need some side cutters, some chain nose pliers, and some round nose pliers. And the last thing you'll need is a rolling pin. Here are the materials that you will need. I am using plated settings for these. I have also put together some kits for these bracelets, and the supply list will be listed at the end of the video. The first thing I'm going to do is take a rolling pin and make an indentation in the floral foam, and remember it has to be wet floral foam. I'm just trying to get a curve that will fit around your wrist. I'm going to roll out some Play-Doh to line the floral foam. You don't necessarily have to do that. I just find it easier. The Play-Doh tends to grip the stones so that they stay in place. You could just spray the floral foam with water, but still I just think it holds better with the Play-Doh. And just lay it down inside of the floral foam. Once you've lined your floral foam with Play-Doh, you can start setting your stones in place. I generally start with the center stone and then work my way around. And you just want to keep checking that they are flat and push them down into the Play-Doh. Once you have all of your large pieces in place, you're going to take your rhinestone chain and just cut it apart to where you have little individual stones and settings. And basically you're just going to take your individual stones and set them in every corner. You should have 8 spots where you will be placing those stones. Before you begin soldering, you not only want to make sure that your settings are even, you also want to make sure they're close enough together so that you can bridge that gap with your solder wire. You may find that some of the smaller stones are sitting down too far, so what you can do is just roll up a teeny tiny piece of Play-Doh and put it under those stones to bring them up a little bit higher to where they're more even with the larger stones. Now that I have all of my stones in place, I am going to begin soldering. I'll be using the heat gun with a 300-degree solder. It usually takes about 30 seconds for the settings to heat up. And I am just heating up the settings, and then I am taking the solder wire and running it down in between the settings, and it should flow and fill the gap in between the settings. You are not trying to heat the wire, you're trying to heat the settings. If I were using a torch, I would be pulling the torch away, pulling the flame away from the solder wire, but you really don't have to with the heat gun. You sometimes need to back off a little bit, just so that you're not melting the wire directly, but for the most part you can kind of keep it in place. And now that I have all the settings soldered, I will be adding the jump rings. There's going to be larger jump rings on each end, and then there'll be a small one right here. I'm going to roll up some Play-Doh to brace my jump rings. First, I need to make sure all of my jump rings are closed. I'm placing a large one on this side. And a large one on the opposite side. And then a small one off to the side. And this is so that the charms can dangle off the side. Try and get in here so that you can see where the jump rings are. Okay, now that I have those in place, I'm going to apply some heat and a good amount of solder to hold those in place, to hold the jump rings in place. Once I have the jump ring soldered in place, I am going to let the piece cool a little bit, and then I am going to remove it from the Play-Doh and just go take it and put it in some soap and water with a toothbrush and a pick. Get all the Play-Doh out of it. If you let it cool a little bit longer, you won't have quite as much Play-Doh stuck in on top of the stones. Okay, I've cleaned up my piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and make the tassel. I'm going to take my 4-inch piece of chain and just cut it in half. And then I'm going to take the 8-inch piece and I'm going to cut it in 4 pieces. First I'm just going to cut it in half, and then I will cut the other 2 pieces in half. They do not have to be perfectly even. You can go back and cut them off later. And since this one chain is a Figaro chain, it's going to be a little bit uneven. There's no way you're going to get that perfectly even. Okay, I'm going to take the wire and I'm just going to start stringing the chain onto the wire. Now that I have the chain on the wire, I'm just going to give the wire several twists. And then just cut it off. Take some pliers and smash the end flat. Then I'm going to run the wire through the bead cap. And now I'm going to take some round nose pliers. You're going to grip it just above the bead cap. And then you're going to wrap the wire around the pliers and then down and around the wire itself several times. Just going to cut the wire and take your pliers and smash it flat up against the rest of the wire. And if your loop isn't perfect or it's not small enough, you can just put your round nose pliers in there and give it a turn. It'll round it out and make the loop smaller. Now I'm going to go in with the side cutters and trim the chain and try and get it as even as possible. Like I said, it's going to be nearly impossible to get it perfectly even due to the uneven Figaro chain lengths. Now that the tassel is finished, I'm going to set it aside and start on the beaded drop. This is a very easy piece. You just take your head pin, place your bead on it, add your rhinestone rondelle, add your other bead, and then you're going to cut it off in between 1/4 and 1/2 inch, probably a little bit closer to 1/2 inch. And then you'll just take your round nose pliers and roll the edge or roll the tip. Just going to straighten it out a little bit. Then use the flat nose pliers to close the loop. I'm going to go ahead and attach the beaded drop and the tassel to the bracelet. Just going to take one of these smaller jump rings, the 6mm jump ring. I'm going to open it up and slide the beaded drop on, then slide the tassel on, and then I'm going to take it over to the jump ring that we soldered to the side. I'm going to run it through that jump ring, and then I will close the jump ring. I'm going to go ahead and add the chain to each end of the bracelet. There's 4 inches of chain in these kits. I only used about 2.5 inches of it. Each side was about 1.25 inches. Probably going to have to play around with this a little bit. I would suggest that you just cut that chain in half and just fit it to your wrist and see how much you need to adjust it. I think mine ended up being 8 links. I'm just using the wire to make sure that my chain is even. And this chain is going on both ends of the bracelet. Just going to open up a 6mm jump ring. And I'm going to take one piece of the chain, attach it to one side of the bracelet. That's the 8mm jump ring that we soldered to each end of the bracelet. And I'm going to take another 6mm jump ring, open it up. I'm just going to attach the chain to the other side. Now that I have my chain on both sides of the bracelet, I'm going to take an 8mm jump ring and attach it to one side. And I'm going to take an 8mm jump ring and attach it to the other side. Now I'm just going to take a fold over clasp, and you just want to put the jump ring in the loop of the fold over clasp. And then you'll just clamp that loop down, and your fold over clasp should be tight. If it's not, then you can push the end of it in. When it's open, you can push the end of it in. If it's too tight, you can pull the end of it out a little bit, and you can always adjust the fold over clasp. I want to show you the difference between these two bracelets. The crystal one I had made earlier, and I used a larger rolling pin for this one. The one I made today, the black diamond one, I used a smaller rolling pin, and actually it has too sharp of a curve for me. If you're using the smaller rolling pin, when you press it down into the foam, if you will push the sides down just a little bit to give it kind of a slant, you will have a more shallow curve. It won't be that sharp curve to it. Or you can just push it down a little bit with your fingers to smooth it out a little bit. And that is it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.